The challenge now is that the dominant factor affecting asset prices is, number one, the actions of the Fed, and number two, the resultant zero interest rates. Now, you in Japan know something about zero interest rates, but we don't. We historically have not had zero interest rates, but we do now. And so zero interest rates distort the market. The future actions of the Fed and the Treasury will be extremely influential in determining how asset prices behave. So now everybody has to be fixated on trying to figure out what they'll do, which is very difficult. But the point is, these things, Fed and Treasury actions and zero interest rates, are extremely influential and can overwhelm, in the short run, questions of, is it a good company? Is it a well-run company? Does it have a good product? Does it have good management? And that kind of thing. So in other words, macro considerations and policy considerations have the potential in the short run to overwhelm what we call fundamentals. And of course, you know, look, the market made a low on March 23rd. The S&P was down 33% in just over a month, which is a record. But then it went up more than 60% in the next 5+ months, not because business was great, we were in the worst recession in history, but because of the actions of the Fed and the Treasury. So that's what I mean when I say distortion. We're in virgin territory where things are going on that have never taken place before. And how do we make judgments about the future? We extrapolate from the past. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we know what happened under similar circumstances in the past. Well, we haven't had similar circumstances in the past. Many people believe that there can be negative ramifications from having that big a deficit and borrowing that much money. What could they be? Weakening of the currency, inflation, loss of the reserve currency status, which the dollar enjoys. But nobody knows for sure. The nickname for economics is the dismal science. It's not really a science. It does not work on dependable laws like physics or mathematics. And we don't know what the ramifications are, but we'll see. The things that the Fed and the Treasury did were absolutely essential to avoid a global depression. And so, you know, the mere fact that something can have negative consequences doesn't mean you shouldn't do it if the alternative is worse, which I think it would have been. But the answer is that the Fed and Treasury did things with uncertain ramifications, and we will find out. We're in an uncertain world. You know, we used to think we knew how the world worked because it pretty much did the same thing every year. The governments, economies, governments, people, businesses performed within a small range, which made the future likely to be an extrapolation of the past. If people behave the same, then the results are likely to be the same. But everything this year is different. We've never had anything like the pandemic. We've never had anything like the economic damage done by the shutdown. We've never had anything like the stimulative actions of the Treasury and the Fed and the related deficits and debt. So, you know, I try to make the point often, you read the memo, so you know, I say that if we haven't been through something before, we can't say what the consequences will be. And so investors have to realize that things used to operate within a narrow band, and the possibilities for the next few years are a much wider band. So it's not that they'll be worse than it used to be. They'll just be more uncertain. And it's very hard to prepare for uncertainty. So the answer is that there's no easy answer, especially when you live in a period of great uncertainty. So, probably, a lot of people say, this is going to happen, so you should do that. Now, I'm never so certain that I know what's going to happen. And so I say, I don't know what's going to happen. So you should diversify your portfolio. You should hedge, and you should not concentrate your risk exposures in any one area. But, by definition, when you don't know what the future holds, then you should reflect that uncertainty in your behavior. The variable, I think, the most important variable at any point in time, the most important question, in my opinion, for an investor thinking about the next 2, 3, 4 years is, should your portfolio emphasize defense or emphasize offense? Should you devote more of your energy and your mental resources and your capital to making a lot of money, or to avoiding losing a lot of money? And the interesting thing, you can't do both. And I would, I am a conservative person by nature. I know that's my bias, and it's very important that we all know our biases. But I would say at the present time, given the many uncertainties in the world, and given the fact that the stock market and the credit market have bounced back so strongly from the crisis lows that were reached in March, I would say this is a time for caution. Now, the trouble with caution is that if you reduce the risk in your portfolio, you would reduce the return. And a cautious portfolio in these days will earn a very small return. But and some people will say, well, I can't live with a low return. I'm going to try to get a high return. Well, how do you do that? It's by taking more risk. And I don't think this is the time for that. So I would urge people who can afford it to emphasize caution and defense in their portfolios, not aggressiveness. Only invest in the ones which fulfill people's expectations. Now, which are they? Hard to say. That's the job for the professional, and even the professionals don't find it easy. And this is why I think that most people should not invest aggressively or concentrate their portfolios in a few stocks. Most should diversify. Many should hold indexes rather than individual stocks, and perhaps turn investing over to professionals. But these are complex decisions. Which companies will justify their valuations, and which companies will keep their promises rather than disappoint investors? And these questions are so hard to answer that the average investor should not try, in my opinion. Since these are difficult decisions, you should not be making them if you don't have a reason to believe that you can make them well. So, the amateur who doesn't know the first thing about technology should not be choosing between 3 software stocks, or should not be choosing software stocks over Amazon and Apple, or choosing Apple over software. As I said, this is a competitive arena where thousands or millions of people are trying to make money. So if you are not an expert or have some expertise, what makes you believe you're qualified to make these decisions? But you must realize that if there's not a reason to believe that you can competently make those choices, then you're taking undue risk. And that's really the most important thing I can say to your listeners. I wrote a book back in 2011 called The Most Important Thing. As I was finishing the book, I had lunch with Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, who works in the building next to mine in Los Angeles. And when I got up to go from the lunch, he looked up at me and he said, "None of this is meant to be easy. And anybody who thinks it's easy is stupid." And that's so important. And you don't get into trouble by being unsure. You don't get into trouble by saying, "I don't know." or I am uncertain, and I'm concerned. How do you get into trouble? By saying I'm confident, I'm certain, betting heavily, and being wrong. And that's what your investors have to guard against. Other people will give you answers. I don't have answers. I only have questions. I try to show how to think about this. Now, since you read the memos, are you aware that my minor subject in college was Japanese studies? And, I learned a lot about that, from that, about how to think. And in particular, there's a concept called mujo. Constant change, the constancy of change, and the inability to predict, to stop change. And I believe in that. And the other thing is, studying Japan produces an appreciation for humility and understanding of the limits of what you know. And I think these are very important. And I try to embody these in my thinking and pass them on to your readers.